Because the next company is Initiator Pharma, a Danish clinical stage life science company targeting unmet needs within the central and peripheral nervous system. And I am pleased to introduce to you its CEO, Claus Elsborg Olesen. Much welcome.
Thank you very much.
You you reached multiple milestones in 2023, so now we are all eager to take part of your presentation, and I'll be back for the Q&A.
Sounds good. Looking forward to give it. So as you said, Initiator Pharma is a clinical stage company. We are dedicated to developing innovative drugs that target critical and unmet medical needs in the central and peripheral nervous system. The usual disclaimer. So Initiator is a company, a Danish company. We are listed on the First North Stock Exchange in Sweden. We have about 4,000 shareholders. We are backed by, blue chip specialized investors in Link and Andrigo, and also many retail investors that has been following us throughout the years of developing Initiator Pharma. So what is it we are working on? We are working on a pipeline of what we call the next generation of monoamine reuptake inhibitors with clinical proof of concept. We are having 2 candidates in the clinic, pudafensine and IP2018. Pudafensine is actually being trialed in multiple different indications here. And what we're actually seeing here is that we have shown now in a phase 2b data study that we have shown 130 patients that we have efficacy. We've reached the primary endpoints. We have previously shown that this compound also has a very good pain profile in a healthy volunteer study. And most recently, we have announced that we actually have female sexual dysfunction data from preclinical models showing that this compound will also have an effect in the many women that are suffering from sexual dysfunctions. IP2018 is also a monoamine reuptake inhibitor, but with a different profile. So this profile allows this compound to be more dedicated to what we call psychogenic ED. So that's people suffering from low mood, mild depression, or antidepressive-induced erectile dysfunction. And here we are previously, last year, we also shown in the 24 patients that we actually have efficacy in a pharmacological study. Also, this compound has shown efficacy in the FSD setting. So besides that, we have 2 preclinical assets in 2016 and 2017, and we have been exploring them for quite some time on what to do with them in the future. And I hope that we are getting to a position where we actually can say, now we know what we're going to use them or one of them for in the future. And we hope to be able to get back to you over the next couple of months and inform you on that. So erectile dysfunction, what is it? Well, we know that more than 400 million men will be suffering from this in 2025. We see that about 35% of the patients are not responsive to first-line treatment. First-line, and also we're looking at people with diabetes, we actually see this non-responsive rate increase to 50%. The first-line treatment are the PD-5 inhibitors, or Viagra, Cialis, which are very common and generic, but actually we want to differentiate from that. So what we actually want to do, we want to go out there and we want to develop a medication for patients not responding or who cannot tolerate the PD-5 inhibitors. What is the competition out there? Well, there is competition, but the only competition we have for the non-responders or these non-tolerated patients are injectables. So actually medications based on alpostaldil, where you inject directly with a syringe into the penis or inside a small capsule inside the urine tract, and thereby inducing an erection independent of stimulation. So not very attractive. So why is dopamine and or the monoamine playing such an important role in the natural erection response? Well, we know that dopamine is the main neurotransmitter in the central nervous system that facilitates sexual motivation, copulation, and genital reflexes. So what is it actually that happens? So upon stimulation, seeing something nice, being touched, remembering something nice, you actually increase the level of dopamine in the cortex, and particularly in the part of the brain called the PVN, the paraventricular nucleus, or more popular speaking, the sex center of the brain. By doing that, through a cascade, you actually activate down through the spinal cord, you produce more nitric oxide, leading to a dilation. So a dilation and opening of the arteries surrounding the penile tissue, more blood flowing in, and thereby you get your erection. So what we are doing with our compound, we are strengthening this process. So in the many patients that do not respond, that is not enough that just being stimulated. So we need to strengthen this natural erection response, and that is exactly what we do with our compounds. So you can say our mode of action of the compounds is very differentiated from the PD-5s, and I'll show you on the next slide one of the differences that we have. But it does not mean that we cannot combine products in the future, because you can say Initiator is about initiating the erection response, whereas the current therapies out there can prolong a response. So that's the differentiation. This is a graph that I shown some years ago on preclinical models in rats, where we show what is actually happening when you give the compounds. In the top panel, you see what happens when you add pudafensine. You start seeing spontaneous erections coming into these animals, so thereby again showing you can increase the pressure in the penile tissue. At the lower graph, you actually see the same graph. We measure in, and here we add sildenafil, one of the PD-5 inhibitors, and you can see it hardly changes the pressure in the penis. Just emphasizing what I said. A PD-5 can only prolong an erection, it does not induce it. That's what we do with pudafensine. Then you can see when we add our compound on top of it, you actually see a massive filling out of the holes, you can say in between the pressure you see in the top graph, meaning that again, the PD-5 inhibitors is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keeping the dilation for longer. So we see that the differentiation with our compound will win us this market segment of the non-responders. What we have done in the clinical trial that was referred to earlier, actually we went in and we took pudafensine in, and we have performed a phase 2 randomized, double-blinded, parallel group, placebo-controlled, repeat oral dosing of the 2 dose levels that we used pudafensine, and also a placebo control in otherwise healthy patients that suffer from ED. We bring them into the clinic 4 times for dosing, and 1 for screening and 1 for a post-trial visit. The 130 patients that we included in have what we call moderate to severe ED, so they have an IF5 score less than 16. So what we do on these assessments, well, of course, it is a phase 2, so we look at safety and tolerability. And that is paramount for all development of drugs for sexual dysfunction. It needs to be safe and well tolerated. The primary endpoint is actually what we call the erectile domain function score, where we actually measure on the EEIF scale, which is also an endpoint in a later phase 3 pivotal trial. And here we are not only measuring on can you get an erection, but also sexual desire, orgasmic function, intercourse satisfaction, and so on. And then we do some analysis on semen and also some PK/PD assessment of the compound, making sure we understand how it works. So what we saw in this trial is that we actually got very positive results, and not only positive, but also statistically significant. We reached the primary endpoint related to improvement in the intercourse setting compared to placebo and also to the baselines, and the results are consistent throughout the study. What we also saw on several of the other clinical endpoints related to the sexual index of erectile function questionnaire, we actually saw that we demonstrated significant effects compared to baseline to what they did before they came in and actually got the treatment. And again, very, very nice data showing that it's not only the physical part, but it's also the mental part, the sensitization of the intercourse that is important. And again, as I repeated before, it's really important that these kind of drugs are very safe. And what we saw that the most effective dose, the low dose of pudafensine, actually were very comparable to what we saw in the placebo control. So it did not give any significant side effects. And there was no critical observations at all observed in this study. The post-hoc analysis is still ongoing, and we look forward to get the final report so we can conclude the deal that we also have with Mac, and I'll get back to that. So we, of course, taking all this data out, and we asked KOLs about what do they think. And I'm not going to go through all the points, but they are actually really intrigued that we can do something with dopamine. That has been tried before, but not with success, because they often get a lot of side effects out of that. They got a lot of nausea and a lot of vomiting in the clinic. We do not see that. It's also on the safety. They're really keen about the safety profile, that we do not have any CYP inhibition or drug-drug interaction, meaning that the patients that are taking this drug can also be on other medications. It is the oral viability is very key, because you can say that compared to the injectable products, this is unique. You can go out there and actually take a tablet on demand when you need it. A really attractive alternative. And they like the data they have seen in the phase 2. So that was enough about the ED part. Then I mentioned about the FSD part. Where are we with that, and what are we doing? So it just emphasizes all we have done in the FSD, the female sexual dysfunction, is preclinical. So we only have animal data supporting this. But I'll get back to why we think this is important. We see very unique life cycle management strategy in this, using pudafensine in sexual dysfunction, and we can actually see us building a whole sexual franchise or dysfunction franchise around pudafensine. So defining female sexual dysfunction, it's a multiple faceted and very complex indication. But it's been identified that the central component in this is what we call HSDD, so hypoactive sexual desire disorder, so lack of desire. Around that we see arousal dysfunctions, we see orgasmic dysfunctions, and then we also have, as a little bit of an outlier, we actually also have pain that is inducing these dysfunctions. And again, remember that the drug we are developing is very suited for this, and I'll come into that on the next slide. So looking at the patients, how many patients are actually suffering? In the US alone, it's 1 out of 10 women is suffering from low sexual desire, and also associated with distress about this low desire. Distress is important to get, you can say, the diagnosis of suffering from HDD. We know it increases with age, less desire increases with age, but women are getting less distressed about it the older they get. There's no approved therapies for HSDD in postmenopausal women, only in premenopausal, but we can get back to that as well. So why is pudafensine such a good match for HSDD? Well, again, we are targeting dopamine, and as I said in the beginning, dopamine is the central neurotransmitter in the brain that works on sexual function and genital reflexes. So it's exactly the same mechanism that we see in men, but of course it plays out differently. What we have shown in pharmacological studies in animals is that we can increase the blood flow in the genitals, we can increase the blood temperatures, which are really important parameters when you're looking at arousal and desire. We have also shown in preclinical behavior models that they can get the animals to behave more, be more copulatory when we give this drug. And also, again, pain plays a role in HSDD as well. And here we have shown in healthy volunteers, in men though, that actually we have a good pain release profile. The drug, again, is an oral treatment. It's on-demand administered, which is really important. It's a non-hormonal therapy, which is particularly important for postmenopausal women. And again, coming back to this paramount safety profile, it has no side effects. You do not gain weight. You don't get in all these nausea and stuff like that you expect from others. And you can use it together with other medications as well. So very safe profile. And that's why pudafensine is a good match for HSDD. Of course, we reached out to KOLs to discuss this, and we see that they are really interested in finding new therapies because there's nothing out there for the postmenopausal. They agree that we should focus on this segment of patients to start with. They're very keen on that it is an all-demand, so you just need to take the tablet when you need it, and it will work for a prolonged time, so you don't need to time it too much. That's due to the half-life of the compound. It will be in your system for some time. And also, you can say it will also allow the women to be in charge of their own sexuality. When do they want to feel or get the support of feeling desired? Again, we're looking at what we could do in the future, but we definitely think that the safety profile is attractive also for this compound in this indication. Switching to something completely else here at the end is the business development. What is it actually we are doing out there with the asset that we have, the clinical data? We've been out showcasing our clinical data. We participated in BioEurope in November. That was just after we got the data from the phase 2b trial. Met up with a lot of the companies that we have been meeting out throughout the years as we've been developing pudafensine and IP 2018. We participated in the JP Morgan Health Conference in January of this year. And then we also signed up for the BioEurope Spring in March in Barcelona in about a month's time. And what is it we're getting from feedback here? Well, people are really excited about the clinical data. They see the statistically strong data we have presented in the ED programs. They like that we are addressing significant unmet medical needs. They like the value of the commercial market that we're looking at, and also very much the limited competition. And the addition of the women's health program is very attractive. So they are really keen that we actually have managed to broaden the scope in just not only ED, but also into sexual dysfunction in general for both women and men. And we definitely see out there that the pharma M&A market, and here I'm quoting again PricewaterhouseCoopers and Leerink, they actually see that this is going to be a new year where pharma is going to go out and looking to acquire or partner or in-license assets from pharma companies like ours, where we have generated proof of concept of the data in the clinic. So what is it we are seeking when we go on and speak to this? Well, we are seeking to find the right commercial partner. And of course, the overall arching goal or aim for us is to make sure that we make a deal that's good for the company and our shareholders. Not only right at the start of the signing of the deal, but also making sure that there's a continuous development of the products going forward. I think many have seen these biotech deals where there's an upfront and then there's billions on the backside, and they never reach any of these payments. So we want to find a partner that is actually interested in developing these assets, so we make sure we generate the most value out of the assets as we progress. And of course, this is a high bar to set, but we definitely feel that this is what we get good pushback and good feedback on when we speak to potential partners out there. So what is it we want to out-license? We want to out-license pudafensine in the organic ED with our data we have. We have the IP 2018 data, the phase 2 data. We have the female sexual dysfunction, the preclinical data supported with pudafensine, which has an IP 2018 that has shown to be safe in the clinic. And then we are continuing having our neuropathic pain program based on pudafensine. And that is also something very much interesting. We see people have an interest in understanding, especially in this time where the opioids have been so much, a challenge for countries like the US, but we see it now more and more also in Sweden and Denmark, that we need to get new good pain reliefs out there for the main patients that are suffering worldwide. So this is what the aim are of what we are doing when we're out there. So why is Initiator Pharma, our offering, why is it unique to investors and to pharma? So we having significant de-risk drug candidates which have demonstrated clinical relevant efficacy. So in the clinic we have shown that the compounds work, and we actually shown again that these compounds actually do what they're supposed to. We have very favorable safety profiles of the compounds, meaning that again we can take the drugs, we don't see any of the side effects that is normally associated with a lot of these monoamine modulating drugs. And that's why we in the beginning said we are developing a second generation of safe and tolerable monoamine modulators. We are targeting significant unmet medical needs. And here I'm referring to that we're looking at ED, we're looking at FSD, we have pain programs, and in all of these areas there's actually limited available therapies out there that provide significant relief to the patients. So we actually see that what we are doing here is quite important both for women and men worldwide. Also, these markets are, of course, there's limited competition, but they are also very attractive indications. There's a lot of patients, so there will be a high demand. And we know from previous experience, for example, both in pain, but also in the ED, that patients are willing to pay for these products. So we can get premium pricing also with strong data that we are generating. So what we actually see again, as you say, in the pipeline, the limited competition we see is from, you can say, modalities that do not work with the same way. They are trying to reinvent the wheel with the PD-5 inhibitors, trying to make something go faster. We are trying to target patients that do not respond to the PD-5 inhibitors, and therefore we are the only one really moving in that space of the non-tolerators or the non-responders to the current therapies. And last but not least, we have a financial runway that lasts us until 2025, so we have time to get the right business development going. We have time to close the right deal as we go forward. Business development is something that takes time. Just because you have data doesn't mean you close a deal the next day. It's a continuous going forth and back, updating and doing this. And we have the time, and that's what we're doing right now. And we look forward to updating you and the market on how we are progressing here. And with that, I would like to say thank you for listening and looking forward to the questions.
Thank you so much, Klaus. Very interesting. And I will start off the Q&A with, can you elaborate a bit on how Initiator Pharma plans to differentiate its drug candidates from existing treatments for female sexual dysfunction, such as Adi and Vyleesi?
Yeah, so the two products you mentioned there are only approved in premenopausal women. So they can only be used in younger women, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Both of them comes with they have limited efficacy. So they do not respond well in the clinical trials that have been conducted with those. So you can say that the data that supports the approval has been very limited. But of course, they were the first products out there to do this. One of them, Velici's and Adi is one of them is a bremelanotide, is an injectable, so you have to inject yourself with a syringe. And of course, that's again, is that attractive? We definitely know that a lot of the patients injecting themselves with bremelanotide actually are seeing side effects of doing this. Whereas the Adi is an oral tablet, but you need to take it daily. So it's a continuous, it's chronic treatment. And those two things are actually two of the first things that the KOL said to us. We want to have something that's on demand, and we want something oral. So you can say, and there we are beating each of them on something. Of course, we also believe that with targeting dopamine, we will beat them also on efficacy. We can see in the models that we got really nice efficacy, and also the compounds, especially the Velici, has a safety profile that is not very attractive. Has a safety profile that's not very attractive. So we think we'll beat them on all these parameters, and also because we will target the postmenopausal women.
It sounds very attractive. How do the recent positive results from the preclinical and clinical studies of pudamfensine and IP 2018 for the treatment of female sexual dysfunction impact on Initiator Pharma's strategy and priorities for 2024 and beyond?
It's a really good question, and as I think I used the word sexual dysfunction franchise in the presentation. And when we came out there with the announcement that we also saw an effect in the preclinical models of female sexual dysfunction, we got an instant reaction from companies focusing on women's health. But we also saw an increased, interest from people, that looked at the ED drug, saying, okay, is there, life cycle management opportunity here to create even more value out of the same asset? So getting a label that is actually both for women and men. So I would say that it is going to change in the way that we are, of course, looking for the opportunity to also do something in FSD or HSTD, and it will definitely, in the longer run, you can say, could you get the broad label? It will be a much more commercial, larger market you go into. You will double the market.
Okay. You were in the US at the SF conference.
Yeah.
How was the reception of the data of the FSD in 2018 and PUDA?
Yeah, so now we talk a lot about FSD, but the preclinical data there, actually that was very well received. We have shown it to a lot of KOLs and discussed with them, what they thought about it, and we definitely got a lot of positive feedback there. I think that sometimes, we have talked about sexual dysfunction for men for many years. Super Bowl was last weekend. One of the most known commercials from Super Bowl is, of course, the Viagra commercial back in the day, and so we often talked about that. We have not done so much with women, and that's a big mistake in my opinion, because it's just as a big problem, but of course it's not so easy to see. So where a men's dysfunction problem is easy to see. So we need to help the patients out there. The many women that are actually having a lack of desire and actually living in partnerships where they want to be part of a regular intercourses and so on, and not just doing it because it's something they have to do, but actually because they like to do it. So I think that that's definitely something we see that some of the pharma companies still need to be converted into that, understanding that it is actually human beings that we are talking about that actually also have a need that we need to cover.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're so right. And when can the first study on FSD be expected?
Yeah, so we have not announced when we'll start doing anything in that, and that's a little bit on purpose, because of course you can say right now we are still trying to sell the pudafensine on the ED data, but of course we're showing the preclinical data, trying to see if we can get somebody so interested in that they will go in and co-finance this or actually become a partner. We have done that before. I mentioned the deal we did with Mac, where they actually came in and they actually sponsored the phase 2 trial. We only paid the pass-through cost, and that is something we thought was very attractive. When we made that deal with Mac back in the day, they actually paid a 70% premium to the share price of what they invested. So we think that this is a good opportunity again to use the safety profile of pudafensine, generate some interest, and then we're able to do something. So we'll get back to the market as soon as we know something what we're going to do here.
Speaking of Mac, when do they need to provide information on how they intend to handle the convertible?
It's a really good question, and I know that some have asked me it as well. As soon as we have the final report from the post-hoc analysis and the final report, and people saying, yeah, but you have all the data. Yeah, but the final report, there's quality control checks, there's signatures and all that. When we have that, then they can convert. So we have spoken with Mac. They are interested in converting, of course. There's, that was the reason they went in to commit with us in the long-term relationship. And as soon as we have an update on that, we'll provide it to the market. But it's been a really good collaboration, and we hope we can keep on extending such a collaboration in the years to come.
Thank you. And how do you view the market's reception of the phase 2b data?
We see a very positive feedback from that. I think that a lot of people there were saying, yeah, can you really do something in this market? They believe in the concept of doing something with dopamine. What a lot of them have been afraid of is that, will you see the side effects also when you start seeing the efficacy? And that we have clearly demonstrated we do not. Just remember, this phase 2 study we have done, they have come in 4 times being dosed, 4 single dosing or repeat dosings as we call it. The trials that some people are comparing with sometimes with the PD5 inhibitors for a different patient segment, they've been dosed 24, 36 weeks. So just that we actually in those 4 dosing can see and reach the primary endpoints is very, very strong. And that just shows that this is a significant de-risking of the project. We have efficacy, we reach the primary endpoints, and we do not see these side effects. So as one of the KOLs also stated on the slide that I showed is that, this profile of having a safe compound could actually maybe even cannibalize some of the PD5 inhibitor patients out there that are even paying much less for the PD5s. They are willing to get some of the side effects away using a product like ours and paying the premium price for it.
Thanks. And could you provide some insight into your company's research and development pipeline beyond pudafensine and IP2018, particularly in the context of sexual health?
Yeah. So in particular in context of sexual health, what we are doing, of course, we are trying to understand, is there any other pathways that could play an important role here? And there's a lot of hormones that have been used over the years. We do not like hormones for a number of reasons. So we are trying to saying that, okay, is there something we can compete with? Or is there something we can pick up that we can include and into the pipeline to build this franchise of sexual dysfunction? We see a lot of assets out there, and the last couple of years has not given less assets on the market that are out there. But you can say most of these assets, they fail on some of the things that we always evaluate them on. Do we believe in the biology? Is there support of that going in? Safety, is it the right safety? We have not found anything that can beat our compounds. And then of course, what would we need to do to develop this? How much money needs to go in? Some of them are very early. Some of them, you can say are not early, but they are clinical ready. But if they don't have the first 2, you can say they have good mechanism of action and have a safety profile that we believe is acceptable for sexual dysfunction, then we don't look at them. On the earlier pipeline, we of course still have 2016 and 2017, and we are exploring what to do there. And we have been saying that for a number of years, but we actually have been working on this, trying to find out the right way. But of course, we are a smaller company, so we're kind of focusing on delivering the results in the clinic that we have now. And of course, now we have time to kind of evaluating, can we do something with these assets based on the analysis and the work we have done. And we're thinking that we are getting closer to what we could do with them in the future.
Like you state, you're a small company, but how do you see on opportunities for more collaboration and partnership with pharmaceutical companies and the whole industry to accelerate the progress in sexual health and achieve your strategic goals?
I think that we see definitely, we can see that pharma are still, they're getting more interested in buying companies at the earlier stage. Either they acquire the whole company or they license out. You can say that, pudafensine now has, 3 possible indications. It has ED, it has FSD, and it has neuropathic pain. So you can say out-licensing that will kind of leave us left with 2018 and then the 16 and 17, the discovery programs. So what we are going to be in the future, we are going to keep on focusing on delivering data that actually are done in clinical trials with the proper placebo-controlled studies. So we generate value to the potential buyers so they can see that this is worthwhile paying for. And then we are still opportunistic in looking at what could we do with the assets to increase the value for the company and for our shareholders. And that will continue to do that also in the long run. Yeah.
And to one last question, what do you hope to be able to report in the year-end report of 2024?
So the year-end report of 2024, I hope that we were saying that we have made significant progress in the BD. We found somebody to work with or out-license or sell the assets to, in at least in one of the indications. I also hope that we will be able to report that we have done something with the preclinical pipeline. We advanced some of these things also for indications that has a high unmet medical need. So those are the things that we hope to report at the end of this year.
So Claus Elsborg Olesen, thank you so much for the presentation and all the answers to the questions.
Thank you for the questions.
Good luck
Pleasure
going
to be here.
forward.
Thank you very much.